Oh yeah, we got to overturn.
You're listening to the E-Men, inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. It has been way too long since we've heard that theme on the show. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Mike the New Haven podcast, episode 403 on this lovely casual Friday. Not in my usual suit and tie. I'll be heading out with some friends after this episode is over, so hence the casual wear. But nevertheless, still our professional manner of being on this program for a mini-series that I have not done in quite a bit, and I've been meaning to return to, and we will certainly return to in the coming shows that lie ahead, and I look forward to bringing you those shows accordingly. Tonight's guest is somebody that I've worked to get for quite a bit, and so I look forward to finally being able to talk with him about his career, and not one rescue unit of the New York City Police Department, but two, as we'll talk about. Of course, he originally started his career in the old New York City Transit Police. For those of you that missed the previous episode, well, first of all, shame on you. I kid, of course. But in the event that you didn't, you want to go back and check it out. It was a very, very good episode, fun episode to do. And that was with Rich Stote, who was the chief of the Bridgeport Fire Department down here in Connecticut. And later, after retiring, still active in the fire service, chief currently of the Danbury Fire Department, also in Connecticut. Long Island guy to start before he got it over to Connecticut, and did primarily those 34 years, 87 to 21 in Bridgeport. So that was another volume of the best, the bravest nationwide edition. Hello to everybody tuning in tonight. Christian Williams, always here. Billy Ryan, John Costello, always here. Never get sick of seeing you guys in the chat. You know I appreciate you. Joe Maliga, same thing. Keith Smullen, who has a great archive channel of like the old WFAN tapes from the 90s and early 2000s. Love your channel, Keith. So good to see you, my friend. And of course, all you. If Chris Ebden, I think I mentioned you already, but I'll mention you again just so I make sure I didn't forget you. A couple ads to run, and then, of course, we'll get our buddy in here momentarily. And the first thing, one of my buddies in the chat, of course, and the co-creator of Tales from the Boom Room, our Bomb Squad / Arson Explosion Squad miniseries, and that is our good friend Billy Ryan. The Mike the New Haven podcast is proudly sponsored and supported by the Ryan Investigative Group. If you need an elite PI, look no further than the Elite Ryan Investigative Group, which is run by retired NYPD detective Bill Ryan, a 20-year veteran of the department who served the majority of his career in the Detective Bureau, most notably in the Arson Explosion Squad. So if you need a PI to handle anything from fraud, legal services, and anything else that you might require, contact Bill at 347-417-1610. Again, 347-417-1610. Reach him at his website or the email that you see here. Again, if you need a PI, look no further than Bill Ryan and the Ryan Investigative Group, a proud supporter and sponsor of the Mike the New Haven podcast. Proud supporter indeed. And you know who else is a proud supporter? Our buddy Vince over at Armor Tuff. When it comes to firehouses, the floors take a beating. Boots, waters, tools, apparatus traffic, it just never stops. That's why departments like the Gloucester City, New Jersey Fire Department and so many others trust Armor Tuff flooring and tile. From the hallways to the training rooms to the apparatus bays, Armor Tuff delivers a clean, professional finish built to handle the daily grind of the job. Durable, seamless, and designed specifically for high-demand public safety environments, this isn't just flooring, it's infrastructure you can count on. And it doesn't stop at the floor. Take a look at the Grove's gear racks, built with integrated security features to protect turnout gear, personal equipment, and department assets. Secure storage, smart design, and built to last, because your gear deserves the same protection you provide to your community. If your department is ready to upgrade its space from the bay floor to the gear room, reach out to Armor Tuff Flooring and Tile, built for the fire service, built to last. Of course, Vince always does great work here from our buddies over at Granite State Fire Helmets. Right before we get to the rapid fire segment, hello to you, Darren Phillips, in the chat. Good to see you as always, brother. My next guest for 21 years was a police officer in New York City between both the Transit Police pre-1995 merge and the NYPD upon the 1995 merge. Working in rescue capacities for 18 of those 21 years between the Transit Police Emergency Medical Rescue Unit and the NYPD Emergency Service Unit, his beat was anything but a boring one. And that for this volume, double nickel, volume 55 of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit is Mr. John Coughlin Jr. John, great to finally talk with you. We've been trying to do this for a while, so it's good to finally get together, brother.
Yeah, we finally got a chance to connect. I appreciate you taking the time.
No problem. Listen, I always give guys time. I never forget about guys. So doors always open. I always say that to guys, even guys that decline. I say, hey, listen, you ever change your mind? Doors always open. It's never shut on this program. So before I get into anything about civil service, going to the transit police and everything that came with that, as we'll document tonight in our conversation, just tell me about where you grew up first.
I grew up in Deer Park, Long Island, New York. It's in Suffolk County. It's about 15 minutes from the Nassau border and 45 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic, into the city.
Mhm. Not terrible. So were you exposed? I know you told me, and we'll dive into this later too. You were a volunteer out on the island for a while around those parts. And Deer Park has a heavy civil service present. The Vigiano brothers were volleys out there. The Downey family is, I believe, from that area. So is that something you were exposed to
Know
early on?
very well. I knew I knew the Downey family before. I used to coach Joe and Chuck in the roller hockey league at the Knights of Columbus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my brothers were big hockey guys, and I wasn't any good on skates, but I was okay. I was a little older than them also, so I coached. I helped coach. We actually won the championship one year, but yeah, I knew Ray very well. We ran in on a couple of jobs in when he was in Rescue 2 and I was in EMRU. I knew the Vigianos very well. John Sr. Was a member of the department I belonged to, the Deer Park Volunteer Fire Department. And then his two sons, they both joined. Joey was more active than John. And both very, very good friends of mine. I miss them to today.
I can imagine, and their imprint on Deer Park is still felt to this day. So, I mean, back then, your generation was one. That's not to say there aren't people in this generation that aren't inclined to want to do this type of work, but your generation was one back then where people were encouraging you guys in your teen years, in your early 20s. Hey, take the test. Even if you don't take the job, go take the sanitation test. Go take the police test. Go take the fire test. For you, I imagine that was the case. But was there any family on the job?
No family on the job for me. Believe it or not, I wanted to be a cop since I was in 8th grade.
And what prompted that?
My brother was a city fireman,
Mm-hmm.
but that's another story in itself. But yeah, I wanted to be a cop since I was in 8th grade. I was the usual guy in school who tried to circumvent or skate his way through. So the guidance counselor told me, listen, you got two choices, trade school or the military. And I looked at him and I told him, nah, I'm going to go to college. So I went to college for criminal justice. I missed getting a degree because I had a car accident during one of my semesters and I missed out on a couple of classes and I never made them up. So I came back from college, got a job at EJ Corvettes as a store detective, and joined the Deer Park Fire Department. I just walked in off the street. So my roommate from college was a volunteer, family history out in the Islip Terrace Fire Department. So that's where I got the bug for that.
Right. And back then, you kind of at least had an idea. Had it not been for the car accident, you would have gotten the degree, but at least most of the knowledge is there. When did you first, and I don't know if it's the only test you took, when did you first take the transit test? And at this time, was it a separate test from the NYPD? Because I know they eventually ran under the same academy until the merger, but was it separate tests back then?
Yes, we were an experimental group. It was test 1157 from the civil service, and the city was given a test at the same time that transit decided they were going to go their own way. And I took both tests, and I heard from transit first, went through the process, and got hired by transit. I started October 20th, 1981. We bounced around at the beginning. We bounced from Gold Street across from the 8-4. That was the official transit academy. It just was a bunch of offices and some small classrooms, but we were in there, and then we went to 4 to 12s to an elementary school on DeKalb Avenue for 2 weeks, and then they finally found us the home up on 155th Street and Frederick Douglass Boulevard, overlooking Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, not a bad place to work out of during that time frame. So definitely.
Yeah. If you were staying in the club in the classroom, yeah, it was a great place to be. But if you were outside, not so good.
Not so good, especially during that time, late 70s rather, early 80s. Not the safest place to be. But then again, your generation of cops helped make it safer, at least. So
our PT was cut short. We would only remember it was an elementary school, so we couldn't run around the gym like the PD could.
Right.
So we would do stuff outside, and there was a overpass that would go over from Manhattan into the Bronx, and people would stand up there and throw things at us. We'd get a lot of what they call airmail.
Airmail, yep.
They throw bricks, whatever they could get their hands. We had to have plainclothes police officers stand up there while we were doing our outdoor PT. So, and then because of the winter, we were limited out there also.
Talking with John Coughlin here on the Mike the New Haven podcast. This is volume 55 of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. Hello to John Richter in the chat as well. Mike Kane, retired FDNY Fire Marshal. One More Tom is the username. He says, John's the best. Proud to call him my friend and my brother. And Don Mormino, who started with the NYPD, was there 81 to 87, 81-10, checking in, he says, before he lateraled to the New York City Fire Department, finished up as a fire marshal in the FDNY. And he says, Harlem University, loved it. Donnie was on the show a while ago. We had a lot of fun in our respective conversation. For those of you that missed that, it's under the best, the bravest FDNY banners. So originally out of the academy, you get onto the street, and that's a different education in and of itself, especially, again, and I've said this before in the program, anybody that's heard me talk to a former transit guy or former housing guy has heard me say this. This is not to disrespect the beat that guys in the city, as it was called back then, had in terms of NYPD cops. Obviously, housing was a very unique beat because you were truly embedded within the community. But I don't think anybody of the three police departments back then, pre-1995, had a more unique beat than the transit police, because it was quite literally a moving, roving community. Yeah, you had people that maybe you saw often because they lived in the area, took the same train, the homeless people, the guys up to no good. But it was a conglomerate of so many different people that you were embedded with throughout the day, all from different walks of life. And you're trying to quite literally keep up with the pace of that and keep your eyes peeled for anything and everything under the sun at a time when radios were garbage, didn't really work that well. And on top of that, listen, all different hours, you're on a moving city like that, which a train is, with the amount of people it's packing, especially in the city, different platforms, a lot to keep track of. District 30 over in Brooklyn, when you first got out, which was your first stop before the summer of 82, which I'll get to in a moment. Give me the makeup of the district at that time, and crime-wise, how busy was it?
We talk about downtown Brooklyn, the court area, but the general area was not too, it wasn't that bad of a crime area, but you got to remember, that was we only turned out of there. We had a number of lines that came out of there. We had the G line, we had the D, we had the F. We covered the A, but it didn't come out of Hoyt and Skimmerhorn at the time. And, all the trains that we had to cover, there were a lot of stations that were, they were high crime areas in high crime precincts. So we had to deal with different clientele, as I'll use as a reference, because of the different areas that we cover. We could go from one station to the next, and the one station you're at is not too bad, and then the next station you're going to is one of the worst in the city.
Right.
So,
and as far as collars go, because at this time there's a lot of drugs in the city. That's, and behind drugs is usually guns. They kind of go tied at the hip with each other. As far as collars go back then, besides the obvious, there was a lot of robberies in transit too. What made up most of your collars early on?
My first collar came when we transitioned into TPF, Train Patrol, and I had the 2 line from Times Square to New Lots. So I'm at Times Square, and everybody knows that by booth 151 is probably the busiest. It's changed now, but it was the probably busiest part of the subway station in the world at 2:00 in the morning. So somebody came up to me and said, "Officer, he robbed me 2 weeks ago at gunpoint." Now, people know me now, but back then I was a brand new kid off the street from Long Island. So I'm there and I'm gung ho, but you're going up against a guy, you don't know whether he has a gun or not. So you pull yours out, you tell him to get up against the wall. He's not cooperating. He's not fighting me, but he's like, trying to do his sidewalk act, as we would say. And all of a sudden he gets on the wall and doesn't move. I'm looking at my gun. I'm going like, hey, this really works. And then all of a sudden behind me, I hear growling. It's 2 canine guys. And he said to me, he says, "Officer, I don't care what you do with that gun. Just keep those 2 dogs away from me." So that was pretty comical, looking back on it. So, but that guy wound up being a good snitch. I got like 4 or 5 gun collars off of in that area during my short career doing collars. I wasn't much of a collar guy because the units that I were involved in, they concentrated more on different aspects of patrolling and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, even before, and I'll get to EMRU in a moment, even before you got there, like just looking at your career and the timeline, we were talking about it off air, like, the type of places that you were in on patrol, you got to see different specialty work in terms of just being a regular police officer, even prior to going over to special operations and that component. So even though it was only a couple of years before EMRU, it was pretty varied. John Richter, I see your question in the chat. We're going to get to it later, but transit merged with the NYPD in April of 1995. Then the housing
April 2nd, 1995.
So the 31-year anniversary of that is coming up. And then a month later, the housing police merged with the NYPD. So they merged right around the same time in the spring of 95. We'll get to that because that's an important moment in John's career and a lot of guys who were in transit and housing at that time. July of 82, you end up going to Citywide. And it was a different assignment, like you said. So, listen, you told me off air, tell the audience on air what made it so different.
Well, let me just go back to Train Patrol for a second. The reason why they put us out on Train Patrol, they gave us 3 weeks of training in the district. Then they put you out in the district by yourself. My first solo patrol after training was Franklin on the A and the shuttle. And it's one of the busiest, most dangerous stations in the city. And I was there by myself on the midnights, and it was April 6th, 1982. And it was a busy night. You had guys jumping the turnstiles coming through. You grab a couple of guys, write some summonses and stuff like that. And then you go upstairs, you check the shuttle, and you know you're a one-man show. So it started snowing about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I mean we only got a couple of inches, but at 8 o'clock in the morning it was face-to-face relief, and two guys showed up.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was the PBA had a lawsuit on a couple of stations throughout the system that they were pushing for dual patrol. And at 8 o'clock on April 6th in the morning, that's when the new dual patrol at that station took effect. So I was the last solo patrol guy.
Wow.
On Franklin on the A and the shuttle. Then after that, we went out and we started train patrol. We do 8 at night to 4 in the morning. Each district had certain lines that you'd get assigned to a line. My favorite one was 42nd Street, Times Square to New Lots, because it was a busy train, busy post, and all we were told to do is go out and take over the trains, take the trains back.
Mm-hmm.
And we just asked, like, how? You'll figure it out. So we get on a train, we start doing our train patrol, and sure enough, it didn't take long for us to figure it out. The last car to train was the clubhouse, the rolling clubhouse on every line. So you had to go in there and you had to, you by yourself. And we were carrying axe handles back then, not nightsticks.
Wow.
And, you get in the car and you try to pick out the guy who you thought was the leader. And you brought him to the car forward. And you had a conversation while they went from the one station to the next. And if he didn't cooperate, back then policing was a lot different than it is now. And, he needed some assistance to get off the train. I'll leave it at that. And then you go back in the car and you tell everybody that this is your stop. And then they turn around and say, you're one guy. And again, you just step out, call on the radio, and next thing you know, you got 30 guys. So, and that's it. It took us about 6 months to really straighten out the system like that. So, and we incurred our share of civilian complaints.
And that's the thing back then, and a lot of people get it twisted when it comes to how policing was overall, not just in New York City during that era, but really across the country. Nobody's encouraging a cop, because I mean, some people think, oh, cops were just running around abusing people back then. No, I mean, did you have a few guys who took it over the line and did things they shouldn't have? Yeah, that's every job. I'm not going to sit here. Nobody's going to sit here and justify
Absolutely.
that. But back then,
I'd be the first one to say that.
Exactly. But for the most part, back then, behavior was matched by behavior. If you were respectful to the officer and said, hey, listen, all right, yeah, we were getting a little out of line. Sorry about that. We'll tone it down. We'll go about our day. Thank you. You know what? Hey, he's not 9 times out of 10. He's not going to harass you. He's not going to do anything to you. He'll appreciate the gesture, and on you go. And it's civil and it's respectful. If that's the energy you're giving him. If you're going to be a loudmouth, if you want to be a tough guy, back then, before body cams, for lawsuits and all that mamby-pamby nonsense, back then, if you wanted to be a tough guy, you got a Coca-Cola, you got a Motorola shampoo, and you know what? Hey, nobody looked at you and said, oh, poor baby. They looked at you and said, good, you deserved it. You shouldn't have been disrespectful.
Brooklyn Turban.
Yeah, and you know what? Good, it was deserved. But it was all in the energy that was given. Could you get away with that now? It's unfortunate. No, because everybody's
Absolutely
too happy
not.
and everybody's taking out these. Oh, look at them. What's your badge number and all that garbage.
Well, the problem with today's policing is there's no accountability. I mean, that's a
whole different episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you believe me, you and I could do an episode on that alone. You ain't lying. You ain't lying. You ain't lying. Before I go any further, it's her daughter posting in the chat, but I know she and her mother are watching together. Maddie Lawrence says hi.
Oh, Maddie Lawrence.
Yeah. She was a former guest in this program as well.
Swear. How are you, dear?
Yeah, Maddie's good people. Erica, I appreciate you watching. That's her daughter. It's tuning in tonight. Hope you're doing well, Erica. So, I mean, around this time, kind of moving ahead, not to gloss over 33, because I'm going to get to that in a moment. But as far as truancy went, listen, sometimes you never know how much of a difference you can make in a kid's life just by saying, hey, leveling with them. What are you doing? Let's get on track here. This doesn't have to end bad. Just get back to school. Get on the right track. Be where you're supposed to be. And sometimes those kids, unfortunately, they don't listen because they want to be tough guys. But sometimes those kids who aren't really bad kids at heart, they're just hanging around the wrong people. Like, you know what? Yeah, this is not who I am. I should get back on track. So
Right.
It could go either way. That short time dealing with that. Tell me about that.
Right. Well, let me just 2 seconds. When I went into Citywide, I went to District 34. They had a summer squad, and the way Citywide worked was the senior guys would go to Manhattan for the summer because it was a little slower, and the summer squad was crazy. So they put the young guys out there. And then when school started, everybody switched. The old timers went back out to 34 and 33, and the young guys went into Manhattan. So I wound up in District 1. And District 1 was at 59th and Columbus Circle. It covered Midtown and a little further north before it hit District 33, which was 145th Street. But anyway, truancy, we would go out and we worked in conjunction with the New York City Police Department. They would do the street and we would do the subway. And all we covered was 42nd between 6th and 8th. That's all we covered. We didn't go anywhere else. And on a normal day, we could wind up with 70 to 90 kids.
Wow.
Before the end of the day. And we had a place right by booth 151. There was a phone bank, bunch of phones, pay phones back then, and it was very busy. They had a store, they had a couple of stores there, but we'd be standing there 9:30 in the morning, and the same crew would come walking past. I mean, every day, and it's like, they wouldn't try to run. They go like, "Oh, you guys are here again," and we keep telling them, "Listen, we're going to be here every day at this time. Okay, so go back to school." So naturally, we have to go and we take them, we process them, and then we turn them over to school security, and they take them up to 47th Street where the truancy headquarters was, and they would process them through the school and notify the parents and go through all that. So every once in a while, you got we had a kid on the street. We happened to be walking down from Times Square to 8th Avenue, and there's a kid talking to two other kids, and the one kid looked out of place. It was a white kid who was talking to two African American kids, and so we snatched up the one kid. The other two kids were older. So we took him back down, processed him. He ran away from Washington, D.C. His mother was a court officer down there. He jumped the Amtrak, and we found a .357 Magnum in his backpack. But it was still in the box, and the ammo was separate. And we said to him, why did you take the gun? Oh, I took it for protection. And and he had some problems at home, so we decided to hightail it to New York. So we had kids like that. So
right, they're not bad kids. They just need some good guidance, and hopefully those moments represent a positive turning point for them. I wanted to go back just a second because I wanted to make a little addendum to what you said earlier about how different an era of policing it was. As far as taking the trains back for the transit police, Jack Maple, a lot of people point to him, R.I.P., the late, great Jack Maple, and the decoy unit in particular, the transit police, which was very important. I'm not going to sit here and say those guys didn't do a bang-up job. They certainly did. Changed a lot about plainclothes policing, what those guys were doing. They were ahead of their time. But a lot of it, too, prior to that, and even as the decoy unit was experiencing enormous success, was what you guys were doing. Presence is half the battle. Just being there, being authoritative, holding your position and understanding, I mean, like it is for guys on a foot post for the PD or for housing back then. This is my corner. Nobody takes this corner from me. This is my train. This is my train car. Nobody takes this train car from me. That was half the battle back then. And if you had that, hey, everything else tended to fall into place.
Well, we also flooded the system with manpower also.
And that helps too.
And back when I was on the job, the transit police, nothing against any other law enforcement agency, but I would say that the transit guys that I worked with were second to none. We had a detail at Madison Square Garden one time. It was Michael Jackson, and he was up in the garden, and the street had 3,000 guys upstairs. Now they have a lot more area to cover, so it has nothing to do with who's better, who's worse. But there was only 12 of us down in Penn Station, and we didn't have any incidents at all. And and I'm sure the PD had their share of idiots up there, but they came down to the subway, and for some reason, people looked at us, and they also looked at the housing guys too, and said, "These guys are crazy."
Right. No, I mean, back then to do the job you guys were doing, where you were doing it with, I mean, again, there's repeaters in the subway, but even now in 2026, it's still a little tough, even with the progression of technology and modern radios and modern equipment. Imagine back then in the 80s, into the early 90s. No, and imagine if you had to call a 1013. You're on your own, or at best, it's just the two of you. That's just thinking about that scares me. So you guys were a different breed back then.
We were on totally separate frequencies from the street.
Yeah.
Back then, we'd call for help, and we'd call 13. It would go to our dispatcher. They would put it out over the citywide air, but it would only go to the transit guys.
Yeah.
And then they had to pick up the phone and call 911 dispatcher and tell them, listen, we got a cop in the area that's requesting a 1013. And then, whomever was in the area, but you're talking about like a lag in time, could be anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes before you see anybody.
That's an eternity. That's an eternity. Especially when you're in a dangerous situation where it could end really, really badly. So,
you're fighting for your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, literally. And that's not hyperbole. And guys got to remember, I'm going to dive into EMRU right now, but, guys got to remember, for those of you that didn't live through that time, or like myself, I didn't live through that time either, but I've done my homework on that time period for New York City. Between the three departments, just look on the Officer Down Memorial page, because since the consolidation, they have all the line of duty deaths from all three agencies listed. It was an extremely violent time to be a New York City police officer. Cops were getting killed left and right.
Eddie Burns is one that was really violent. Irma Lozada,
Bobby Venable. Yeah.
Venable.
Yeah.
That one was really, really tragic. A friend of mine was in uniform. He was the operator of one of the two Suburbans, and Bobby made a collar. He was in plain clothes. He made a collar at another station, and they were transporting him back to the station. And then all of a sudden, something jumped off on the PD radio. There was a guy with a MAC-10, and the cops they were in a shootout. So they told Bobby to stay in the car because he was in plain clothes, and the description was a male black. And being Bobby, the story goes, he jumped out of the car and he slid in next to one of my dear friends, Joe Asti, and he took one to the head. Just a spray, a lucky spray. And Joe had to jump on top of him to make sure he tried to protect him from anything else. And then they made a fruitful attempt to bring him back, and they took him over. I don't know if they took him by RMP or they took him by.
It was by RMP. They threw him in the back of an RMP and rushed him
Yeah,
down.
like I said, I wasn't there, but I'm just. Yeah. But the thing is, though, Joe witnessed the whole thing, and Joe jumped on him, and you know, but they told him stay in the car, and then being Bobby, being any one of us, you're not gonna stay in the car during a shootout.
I know he wanted to
let your guys and girls do you're gonna it's in your brain, it's in your heart. You're gonna get out of the car and you're gonna try and help.
No, I mean 100%. That's so. Before I get into EMRU, that's September 22nd of '87. Irma got killed September 21st of '84. So her anniversary had just literally been the day before, if I have my timelines correct. And as John said, they got a call. I think it was 1 or 2 guys in the area, heavily armed. I think a passerby flagged down a transit police van that had prisoners in it and said, hey, there's 2 really armed to the teeth guys down the street. So as the story goes, I believe, and anybody that knows it, if I have any details wrong, put it in the chat by all means. They get down there. The person obviously didn't care if they were transit police, housing police, or NYPD. They needed a cop in that moment, and they got one. They went to confront the scumbags, and as John said, they started spraying on the cops. Bobby got shot in the head. They threw him in the back of the RMP, and he died in the line of duty that day. He was 35 years old. He left behind a little girl who's since grown up now. A park's named after Bobby in his memory. So
yeah, I was there for that. I was there for the dedication.
Yeah, and his daughter was there too, and she's all grown up now, seemingly doing well, but robbed of her father at such an early age. Now, getting back to your career, thanks for mentioning Bobby. He deserves to be remembered.
Yes.
Before you went emergency medical rescue unit full time in '84, there's a period there, '83 to '84, where you were vacation relief. So you were half patrol, half rescue. So just tell me about that little time period.
It was easy. There was people that had applied to the unit. And let me just backtrack for a second when it comes to EMRU. And I didn't even have my first day on patrol. I went into District 30, and I was getting my locker, and I was starting the next day, and Sergeant Linus Armstrong was a covering sergeant on the desk, and he was in charge of EMRU at the time. And I walked in. Didn't have 1 minute on patrol, and I handed him a transfer request to go to EMRU, and they hadn't put anybody in EMRU in 5 years. He looked at me and he goes like, "What's this?" He says, "I want to go to EMRU." He said, "You got any time on patrol yet?" I said, "I start tomorrow." And he looked at me. He goes like, "Okay." And then we started talking about my background and everything else like that, and that was it. But it went through the system. Transit was a real small department. Went through the system that some guy had the balls to turn around and put in a transfer order to EMRU without even having a day on patrol. So, but the reason, going back to what you asked, was the reason why I was able to do the vacation reliefs for the most part is because I was in the citywide unit, and you weren't pulling from precinct manpower. So citywide was like task forces, they would backfill the precincts when they were shorthanded or they had a high crime rate going on, and they needed more cops to flood the area. That's basically what citywide was, other than their normal patrol. Like we would do school, school conditions and stuff like that. But it was easier to pull from citywide than it would be from the precinct for a replacement. That's how I wound up doing vacation relief.
And you make do back then, because that was just how it was back then. Billy Dempsey says, "What's up, Otto?" He's watching from LinkedIn.
Oh, money.
And Billy, I'm waiting for you to come on, brother. We gotta talk. Carl Myers saying hi too. He's watching as well. So good to see both of you guys tuning in the chat. But back then it was, again, with the personnel you guys had. I think you guys were about 4,000, if not slightly less than that.
So about 4,200 back then.
Yeah. Yeah, to make do. You guys made do. And it made sense because, I mean, even though it was smaller, guys got cross trained and you had qualifications going back to, of course, being a volley in Deer Park on the island. So it made sense. And of course, the transition was a lot easier once you became full time in '84. Now, Anita Rosado and I talked about this when she was on a while ago. Well, she's made multiple appearances, but her first appearance on this
Nini.
program. Yeah, love Anita. She's down. Well, she's down in Florida too these days.
I'm going to see her next week.
Well, you tell her Mike Colón says hello. I love Anita. She's the best.
Yeah.
That being said, she said with transit, everything is well, Billy. Thanks for checking in. Anywhere a train crosses over a bridge, you guys in theory could go and jump on the job because yes, there are the below ground jobs, which we'll talk about, the man unders, the pin jobs. Somebody is having a baby on the train or passes out on the train. You guys are going to go and handle that. And you handle them all the time, even animal jobs. I remember John Bushing talking about that too. But in theory, again, if there's a train going near that area, it's not off limits to EMRU. So how many jobs will you jump on above ground?
I would say prior to the merge, we all jumped on a lot of jobs in the street. I mean, you know, I could tell you there was a job where, not me personally, but there was two people. They worked a man under, and they worked with the street. The ESU came downstairs, and they were all working hand in hand and everything else like that. And then on the way back to the quarters, they got a man on the bridge. And our guys, we were cross-trained to do. We went to STS school down at Floyd Bennett Field, and our guys started gearing up, and they started ascending the cables, and you know, there was selective memory. I'll leave it. Just leave it at that.
That's fine.
With the guys from the ESU units at that time, and they're like, I don't see any trains here, you know. So, but that's just.
Yeah, listen. But, everybody's type A. They want to get after it. So yeah.
There was certain trucks in the city back then, and everything has been well hashed out. It's ancient history. It's in the rearview mirror. But there were times back there where there was some words exchanged and stuff like that. Nothing, you know. And what it was everybody had the same mindset. They wanted to be first in the door. They wanted to be the one to do the hero work. And nothing against their passion or their attitudes and stuff like that. You know, we all had the same, like I said, we all had the same mindset. We want to be the guys that were going to do the rescue, you know? And, you know, sometimes our egos got in the way. So.
Right. No, and that's, I mean, listen, it's the same thing back then with certain, not everybody, but even the FDNY rescue companies and emergency service. Everybody's trying to do the same bang up job, but it's just a matter of being, you know, the one to be able to execute it. Otherwise, why are you there? And that's the thing. Everybody, it's not a bad thing. Everybody's type A. You have to be, if you're going to be, as we've profiled several times, in units like emergency service, the FDNY rescue companies or the squads, the bomb squad, we've profiled those guys extensively in this program. Yeah. You better be type A. If you're not type A, you don't belong in units like that because the units demand personalities like that. And it's not because of ego. It's because look at the work you're doing. It takes a very special breed of person to go up on a bridge and get an EDP, to kick down the door.
It's not to say anything bad about, you know, I wanted a guy being a TS operator or a guy being station house patrol or.
Yeah, no, not at all.
You know, if that's what you know, it's a job first off. But if that's how you want to spend your career, you know, somebody's got to do it. All right.
Right.
I don't hold any grudge against anybody for now. You know, like you said, it takes a special kind of person to do the work that we did. Okay.
Right. Hands down. And you guys were doing it well back then. And the thing to remember in comparison. And this is not to say, you know, again, it was a bigger department, so naturally it had more personnel. And even then, it's a small unit within a gigantic department. But at least with the emergency service, right, you got 10 trucks throughout the city to work with, and those 10 trucks do a bang up job. In Brooklyn's case, there's 3 trucks to cover that whole borough with 6, 7, and 8. Every other truck has 2, with the exception of Staten Island with 5 truck, which came way later. But they have that. Housing rescue was not around long enough. It was only around about less than a year. They came way later. You guys, I remember Charlie Caperna alluding to this when he was talking about on that episode of Cops, where him and Kenny Schnetzler had a couple calls together, where he's saying, I mean, now I got about, this is 94. Now I got about 5 and 6 trucks to cover 4 boroughs, except for Staten Island. But back then it was like what, 2 or 3 trucks, and there's 2 guys and no heavy rescue truck, right? Every ESU truck had that. You guys didn't. You guys didn't.
Nope. We had everything on the little trucks.
Yeah.
We had
those little GMCs.
And we were running 2, we only had like 2 or 3 vehicles. And we were running them into the ground. You know, Joe said, I mean, when I first got into the unit, Joe said would be out there in the rain underneath one of the vehicles at 5 o'clock in the morning, trying to fix something to make sure that we had patrol vehicles to go on the road. Okay,
and look at what you guys.
That's how dedicated Joe said. Was a very dedicated, knowledgeable individual in the emergency medical rescue unit.
Oh, for sure. You know, Joe said was Bobby Gagan saying hi too. You know, Joe said was on this program a while ago, and I had the good chance to kind of profile the beginnings of the Transit Police Rescue Unit with him, and that was a lot of fun. So and again, he was the guy that for a long time was spearheading a lot of these efforts, for the most part by himself. He had assistance later, but for context, I'm going to try to load the picture in so it's a bit larger in terms of frame. But this is what the guys were driving around in Transit Rescue. Those old school GMCs. Very nice looking trucks.
Those were the nice new ones.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of closer to the end. But I mean, back then, what was this? Were you guys driving Suburbans?
First vehicle I was in, it was a Suburban. I was riding around with my first partner in EMRU, Frank McCabe. Frank McCabe was 6'9". Okay. And our sergeant at the time was George Mitchell, and he was 6'7". Okay. And tiny. I was sitting in the back jump seat, and I was the midget at the time.
And how tall are you for context?
Excuse me?
How tall are you for context?
Oh, 6'2".
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, what a small guy.
I mean, I was a lot bigger on the job too.
Of course. And here's another close-up.
Tell those guys not to make fun of me. So
Bobby says, "Hey, Otto, 91 by Transit."
Yep.
Yeah, Bobby, I got to get you on the show, brother. You know, we got to talk. So I'd love to get him on. And there's another close-up of the old school EMRU trucks. So as far as, I mean, and again, it's unfortunate. We wish these things didn't happen. But between people getting murdered because some psychopath shoves them in front of the train, or some poor soul deciding that suicide is the answer, newsflash, it's not, and deciding I'm going to jump in front of a train, EMRU, and this especially was true for the guys that went into ESU post-merger, were the masters, and I mean masters, of jacking up the train for space cases, which are horrific, the suicides and the homicides of people who end up under a train. It was your bread and butter because you were unfortunately doing it so often. So in terms of just being able to do that, I remember talking about this with Franco Baraducci, and I'm going to talk about it with you too, because every perspective is valuable and different. The science of jacking up a train, especially with the airbags, what does that mean to you? Explain it.
Well, Joe said was very, very good in his instructions about how to go about lifting a train, and he had certain lifts that he taught us, and he had names for them and everything else like that. But when you get under the train, you just try to make it work, because you got somebody that's wrapped up in there, or they're pinned under the truck, or so you're just doing whatever you're starting to put the system together. You put the wood, then you put the bag, and then you put the wood again, and then you put a chock in so that where the springs are, and then you tell the guy up top, go ahead, clear, and the train goes up, and we were able to extricate the individual, whether he or she was alive or they had already been killed. We still had to get the person out from under the train. They weren't back then. I mean, now you don't roll the train over, until you have an open space. You have to go, even if it's a crime scene. What would happen is if somebody was pushed or there was a crime involved, we actually had to wait under the train until the detective squad showed up, and they were all dressed in their diamond rings and their three-piece suits and everything, and they weren't getting under the train to take the pictures, so they would hand us the Polaroids, and we'd take pictures for them. And then once that was done, then we continued with the removal.
Right.
So, and then once we removed them from under the train, then we brought them up on the platform, and then technically the post cop who was doing the report, that individual was supposed to do the search, like the body search, check the pockets, whatever property there was. So we never made them touch the body. We did all the dirty work. We turn around, just watch and write. Right front pocket, a $1 bill and a silver dime, and whatever else was in there. So we didn't make them. We didn't make them get dirty. There was an unwritten rule though in rescue and in ESU, and if you treated the street guys disrespectful and it got back to the bosses in transit, you went and we were down in District 33, so you would go do a foot post on the L line. It could be up from one day to like a whole week. You'd be assigned to that foot post, okay? And it wasn't pretty, okay? So what it actually tried to illustrate to us is that you treat the street guys with respect, okay? Because they're actually the first ones on the scene.
Right.
So,
and the thing, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
Yeah, and the thing to remember too, I remember talking about this with Joe Dolan, who was both an ESU guy and a bomb squad guy, where, the ESU cop or the bomb squad cop, depending on what the scenario is, they know what they're going into 9 times out of 10. The situation's already escalated to such a degree where they're required to be there. And the situation, even though it's still ongoing, is relatively controlled in that patrol officers are there. You have people already on scene. You're not going at it alone. Doesn't mean the job's still not heavy. It certainly is. But you at least have a mental picture of, okay, I'm heading to this. The patrol cop does not. You get dispatched to a noise complaint. You go there. It turns out a drunk husband has a gun to his wife's head and is going to threaten to blow her brains out if the cops take one step further. All of a sudden, you just want to go there thinking you're going to tell the guys, hey, turn the music down, take it easy. We'll be on our merry way. Now you got a full-blown domestic and a hostage situation. That's just one scenario. So the patrol guys, listen, Joe Patowski put it best. He didn't say it on this show. He was another bomb squad guy, but he said it best in a book I read, or an article I read about the bomb squad a number of years ago, where he said, I don't have to worry about somebody walking up behind me and shooting me in the back. The patrol cop does. And I don't envy what they do. I can never do what they do. And that's why in my case, I'm trying to run into burning buildings instead, because I'd rather do that than dodge bullets. I'll take that over being a cop any day.
I don't know if you ever heard this saying, but it goes, when the civilians need help, they call 911. When the cops need help, they call the ESU.
All the time. I've said that saying, and I've shared that saying.
Look at those 2 poor cops up in the 3-2.
Yep.
They were going on a domestic.
Yep.
A mother and son having arguments. Never said anything about any. The mother never said anything about any guns or weapons in the house. And these guys started making their way down a narrow hallway, and it was unfortunate, and it didn't have to happen. But that's what they're walking into. They don't know what they're walking into.
Right. I think back, I remember talking about this with before he passed away, Commissioner Safer, because it was the first line of duty he had when he became police commissioner. Vinny Giudice, 96. Vinny Giudice goes to a domestic, I think in the 5-0. And, it's a boyfriend and girlfriend fighting. The boyfriend throws a mirror at Vinny. And poor Vinny, the mirror shatters, cuts him on the leg, cuts an artery. He bleeds out, out of all ways to die on the job. He died at the hospital. But he bled to death, the poor guy,
Right.
And his partner did the right thing. His partner, God bless him, put the tourniquet on Vinny in an attempt to stop it. They got Vinny to the hospital, and Vinny looked like he was going to pull through, but unfortunately he worsened and he died. And there you go, a simple domestic like that, where you probably just want to get him separated and move on. This thug, who should have been in jail for murder, but got manslaughter instead, I don't know why, threw the mirror at Vinny. So you just never know how it's going to go. Getting back to EMRU, speaking of, there's days where you're dealing with just about anything. And I'll get to the big jobs if you were there, like 91 with Union Square, the Trade Center in 93, and Leary in 94 in a moment. But as far as the medical component, let's not forget, it's the Emergency Medical Rescue Unit. You guys are still the police. You're going to handle criminal matters. But if there's somebody having an emergency on the train, like a heart attack, they pass out, you get a pregnant lady, all of a sudden those contractions are happening in a fast rate and the baby just might be born that day. Tell me about responding to jobs like that and the jobs you most remember in that realm.
I delivered a baby on the subway.
There you go. There you go, Joe Maliga. That was the question. So tell me about that.
Kevin Fitzpatrick and I were partners that day. A real good friend of mine. Still friends today. We were in volunteer fire service together. But Saturday in July in 1991, we're just driving down the road, and we get a call for a maternity at Franklin and Eastern Parkway, which was District 32 at the time. So we roll in, and right in front of the token booth, there was a female laying there. They had already disrobed her, and they had a cover on her. So we get down in. Now, Kevin was at the time was in nursing school, so he's like, oh boy, he's getting all excited and everything. He's going to deliver a baby, and all this other stuff. So he went down and checked and didn't see anything. Nothing. That was immediate or imminent. So he goes up and starts talking to her, and then all of a sudden she screams again, and I look down there and I go like, uh-oh, the head's there. So Kevin and I, we worked together. We wound up delivering the baby together. Okay, everything went well. Kevin cleaned the baby up, and I made sure the mother was okay. And so after the job, we're walking up. I think Kevin was carrying the kid, and I'm walking up with the equipment, and EMS is in front of us, and we over the radio, we get a man under 2 stations away at Kingston. So we turned around to EMS and said, well, this was short-lived. Here you go.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So we run down to to Kingston. We're the first unit on the scene. No, and the power's still on and everything else like that. And the motorman's, the train stopped halfway in the station, so he didn't make it all the way through. Girl had jumped in front, 17-year-old girl had jumped in front of the train. And she got not knocked out, but she hit the train and she hit the ground hard, but she was a little groggy, but her main objective was to kill herself.
Yeah.
So now we go onto the train and we don't wait for the power to go off because we're trained to go under even with the power on. So we're crawling under the front car of the train, and Kevin grabs her leg, and then I start pulling, and she's reaching for the third rail. She's actively trying to reach for the third rail, and now we're wrestling with her. And I was north of 300 pounds at the time, and Kevin was a big boy. He was like 260, 270. So you had two big guys wrestling with a like 130 pound, 120 pound female. But she was like, she was really reaching. So we got her under control. but we're still trying to get her cuffed up, and so we can hand her up to the people up on the unit starting to roll in. And all of a sudden we hear metal on metal, and it's coming from the back of the first car. It was a guy from Rescue 2. And he was coming to help. I'm not begrudging him, but he had all his fire gear on. He had a Halligan with him. He had on his coat and everything, and a lot of metal. And we turned around and yelled and said, "Listen, the power's still on. Don't move. Stop what you're doing. Don't move. Stay away from the third rail, blah, blah, blah." And then I hear that old familiar voice. "Who's down there?" And I go like, "Ray, is that you?" He goes like, "Yeah, this is Captain Downey." "Yeah, well, this is Coughlin. All right, just stay up there and we'll hand her up to you and you can take her upstairs." "Oh, okay, no problem, John." But it's a small world. You run into people all the time.
Right. And from what I remember hearing, I mean, for the most part, except for a few personalities, ESU and Rescue, they worked together just fine. It was just when certain personalities would mesh that things would kind of go a little haywire. But from what I understand, Transit Rescue and the FDNY Rescues got along really, really well back in the day. From what I heard, I don't know if I'm right or wrong.
You are absolutely correct. Yeah. My brother, I got on a job in 81. My brother got on fire department in 86. Was assigned to Ladder 129 in Queens, right down the road from 10 Truck. Mm-hmm. And I was there, and he was probie. And I came over to visit him. I had Brooklyn, Queens, so we went over and visited him, and we were in a transit vehicle. So, of course, we were welcomed with open arms. There were a couple of mounted guys stirring they were making dinner. They were stirring the pot. They were having seafood. The guys were having lobster races on the table. And my brother is sitting there eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I smacked him in the back of the head, and I go like, "What are you doing? First of all, you should be over there stirring the pot, not the cops." And, and then the captain comes over and says, "Oh, you must be his brother, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. And I said, "Yeah." I said, don't let this probie get away with this crap, boss." I said, "We won't have this." And sure enough, they broke his shoes and stuff like that. But my brother turned out to be a really, really good fireman. Good. And that's a story unto itself. I could tell you how it all transpired, but that was the thing with the fireman. And then we merged, and I was assigned to 10 Truck, and we showed up on a pin job together. And I go over to my brother after the job. "Hey, how you doing?" We hug and stuff like that. "How's everybody?" Blah, blah, blah. I go back to my unit. They're yelling at me. "Why are you talking to the fireman?" And my brother goes back to the fire guys, and he says, "Why are you talking to ESU?" And my brother says, "Listen, that was my brother. He was in the firehouse a month ago, stirring, making dinner and having dinner with us when he was in transit." "Well, he was in transit back then. We like them. We don't like ESU." So,
yeah. I mean, and I guess it kind of brings us ahead into the 90s because, and again, if you weren't at these jobs, you weren't at these jobs, but transit has an important role in each of the three. The Union Square derailment in 91, everybody was there, including Pat Pogan. I mentioned him because he's in the chat.
Oh, yeah. The city ESU guys, I mean, our guys were there. We had four or five guys. It was on the lake tour, so I wasn't there. But the ESU guys were ridiculously great. From what I heard,
yeah,
yep. And they all, from what I heard, there was not one negative comment that came out of the work that ESU and Transit EMRU did during that job. So,
for sure. For sure. Pat Pogan says, hi, Mike, and hello to John, one of my STS January 82 classmates and somebody who was at that job back in 91. And Rick Martinez sends his regards, too. He's a 3-truck guy in the Bronx. So good to see you both tuning in this evening. And so you were a day tour guy then. So the anniversary was yesterday. Did you get 93?
No, it was 93. I think I was working in Brooklyn, but I never got assigned the job. And, you couldn't jump the job because, in Manhattan, if it was in Manhattan and you had a Manhattan car, then you could go, but
right.
You had to leave one car in service,
That makes sense. Yeah. You guys, you couldn't send everybody because somebody's got to cover the rest of the, true.
Somebody's got to cut. And then when we turn around, we stage ourselves by the bridges in case we got to jump into Manhattan or,
right,
Queens.
Right.
We staged down by the 59th Street Bridge, so we had some kind of strategic location. So if we had to go to the Bronx or, Brooklyn or Queens,
makes
Manhattan.
sense. Yeah, because I think, I'm sure there were more, but housing rescue wasn't a thing yet. That came later in 93. That was like the summer of 93. But transit rescue, I know, Franco told me he was there. Franco was there. Daryl Summers told me he was there because Franco and Daryl were working together that day.
Oh, for 93?
For 93. And then Sergeant Said also told me on this show that he was there as well. So I know those three guys were there climbing stairs, helping out. I don't know who else from transit rescue might have been. Whoever knows in the chat.
Two very good friends of mine and great guys.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, all three have been on this program.
We used to call Franco Huge.
He's a bodybuilder.
Because of his muscles.
Yeah.
Franco Huge.
Yeah, he's when he was on the show, listen, the guy still looks pretty good, man. He keeps himself in good shape, man. So Franco,
he's an animal.
Yeah, Franco's still doing well. It looks like he's still hitting that gym. So good guy, for sure. Good guy. All three good guys and good guests in this program. So again, I'll ask you, if you didn't get this job, you didn't get this job. That's fine. But the last big job Transit had was when Leary, who for some reason, this was the most odd extortion plot I've ever seen, because that was his goal. It wasn't necessarily terrorism. When he firebombed the 4 train right before Christmas in 1994, did you have that job or did you miss that one too?
No.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That was a big job.
I didn't have, I had jobs, but not like the big jobs.
Okay.
And those were the 3 big ones.
Yeah. I mean, if you were there, it's kind of luck of the draw. If you were there, you were there. If you weren't, you weren't. But there were plenty of jobs to go around that you got the chance to handle over the years. Transit is in an interesting spot. Oh, hi, Kenny Bowen. He's in the chat too. He's saying hi to both of us. Another former guest of this show. Transit's in an interesting spot by the spring of 95, because if you look at where, actually, you know what? I'll get to the merger in a second. But let me go back a second. Let me backtrack in my own right, because I didn't want to gloss over this. Since I mentioned Franco, it jogged my memory. You guys trained housing rescue. So you guys helped them out and kind of gave your own version of an STS to them when they were starting.
Housing rescue was forming, and they came to us for training. And Richie Locke, may he rest in peace, good friend of mine, and Mike Bichotta, and I think Al Polano, they were running the training component and in our unit. And housing came over. Ralph Pasculo was a lieutenant at the time.
Yep.
Owen McCaffrey was a sergeant. And then you had Stephanakis and his partner Richie Winwood, and then there was Jimmy. Oh God, he took over North Shore as the Romanelli, Jimmy Romanelli, and he was a I think he was only the only homicide detective in housing, and him and Ralph were the big they did the big pushing. Jimmy was all over it, but we did most of the training, or all of the training. And when we came to like vehicle extrication and stuff like that, they came out to my firehouse, and they brought their tool. We were still using Hearst, and they were starting with the Hamaltro tool back then. So it was a little different for us, but my department provided the cars to cut up, and we'd go out to the firehouse, use the classroom, and then go out to the training center that we had out in Deer Park, and we would we would do the training on the tool. And they were only in existence less than a year because they got consolidated before they
Summer of
emerged.
94.
They got consolidated in August of 1984. And what that meant was they went over to the city ESU. They stayed in their housing uniform. They used their housing vehicles, but they worked out of an ESU truck. They were all spread out throughout the city. They were all assigned to different trucks. And then with the merge for us, we merged April 2nd of 95. They didn't merge until sometime in May, technically.
A month later.
Full merge. But they were consolidated in August.
Yeah, and that was Tom Bridges says hi as well. It says good evening, always a gentleman. And Chris Ebden, who was working New York City EMS at the time, says cool part about that class is that housing taught us a week of elevator rescue, and EMRU taught us everything to know about train jobs. That is true. Yep. That is true. And Chris detailed that when he was on the show for his own appearance a little while ago. And the thing for those that don't remember, and I'll just to kind of add my own addendum to what John said, summer of 1994 is when that consolidation takes place. So guys from ERU, from housing, are on loan to the City of Police Emergency Service Unit. So if you ever want to read Sam Katz's first book, not the second one he wrote on ESU, which came out in 1997, but the first one, which is primarily a picture book from 1994, 1995-ish, around there, a lot of the pictures in that book are from that brief time period before it became official with the merge. So you'll see guys like Vinny Martinez, Richie Winwood, the other John Coughlin, who was a sergeant in Ford Truck who gave his life on 9/11. They all are in on ESU jobs, but they're wearing, if you see the patch, it says Police Department, City of New York, Housing on it. They were considered technically ESU cops, but it didn't become official until that merger in May of 95. So by the time they kind of slid on over officially, they were already there. So it wasn't as hard of a transition for them. But there were, so that brings us perfectly into the merger itself. The unions are fighting it heavy. There's injunctions in court. It's getting nasty because Mayor Giuliani really wanted this. And a lot of mayors prior to him had tried for it. Koch most notably failed miserably in court when he tried to get it. Giuliani played bully ball, whether you like it or not. A lot of people don't agree with it. His methods were questionable at best, but he got what he wanted. And in the spring of 95, this happens. Now, like I said, housing at least has the benefit for the guys that are going to emergency from their rescue unit of having already been there. They got the awkwardness out of the way the previous summer. You guys didn't. You guys went straight in. And even if you knew each other from jobs, it's still a very hard transition. And you'd been in the unit at that point 11 years. Were you a proponent of the merger? And B, when it went down and you had to now go into ESU, how much of a mixed bag, if any, because you could have felt differently, you tell me, was that for you emotionally?
Well, let me backtrack. Maybe I would say within the year or 2 years prior, we had a big powwow, just our unit, and we were at Crossroads, and had nothing to do with the merge, but we all, we went around a room because some guys would buff the city jobs, and they wanted to be ESU, and some guys just wanted to be the medical. They didn't want to get involved with any of that other stuff for whatever reason. So I was always a proponent of going to ESU. I always wanted to go to ESU. That was the ultimate goal of my career. I got into transit rescue, and then when the merge started talking up, there was a handful of us that really wanted this to happen, and people, they kept saying, nah, wishful thinking, blah, blah, blah. And then when it finally happened, believe it or not, the guys that were at that original meeting and poo-pooed the idea of, upgrading our training and stuff, they turned out to be really, really good ESU guys. Once they were reserved to the fact that they had to go in and they were going to be merged into and absorbed into ESU, they rose to the occasion. But as far as the the merger was concerned, I don't know if you remember, but that was Oklahoma.
Yeah, because that same
Okay,
month,
because-
April 19th of 95.
because we merged, and what they did was they split the unit in half. They put the senior guys in one group and the junior guys in another group. They sent the junior guys out to the trucks with the transit vehicles, but the city uniforms, and then they sent us to STS school. But I think a week into STS school or 2 weeks, Oklahoma hit, and all the guys that were supposed to train us, they're on the task force. They're gone. So it was Steve Simsak. I pronounced his name wrong, but Simchuk or whatever his name was. He was there, and maybe one or two other guys, and that was it. And we didn't do much for 6-7 weeks, and then it was time for the other group to come in. So we went right out to the trucks. Now I would say most of us, we had gone to STS school prior. What happened was there was a program where 2 transit guys would be able to go to the STS school as a cross training. So I went in 1986 with Bobby Mason, and there was only 8 guys in the class. It was me and Bobby, and then there was Richie Green, another sergeant. I forget his last name, but I think his name was Hugh. And then it was Patty Pogan, Mike Core, Richie Teasman, may he rest in peace.
Yeah, my man.
Henry Gomez, Larry Olivetti. Yeah, that was it. That was the crew.
Yeah,
and
miss him.
That was our STS class back then.
Yeah,
and
shorter too. It's like only 6 weeks, wasn't it?
It was 7 weeks.
Damn.
7 weeks, and the transit guys, we had to go back to our command when they went up to Rodman's Neck to do the long arms. But I have pictures right next to me of the training in Staten Island where we did the rappelling. We did it was an abandoned apartment complex. We did we did the entries. They put us on a stack, and we would go in with the city guys, and we would learn how to stack up and make an entry into a unit, apartment, house, whatever.
Right, whatever it was.
So we did everything they did back then, except they wouldn't let us touch the big guns.
Pat Pogan says Herbie Strouder.
Excuse me?
Herbie Strouder is a sergeant, and he just put in the chat.
Okay, Herbie, okay.
Yep. So that's the other name. And well, the big guns would come later. 10 truck is interesting because setting the scene when you get there in 95, right after that merger.
10 truck, it was me, Kenny Schnitzler.
Yep.
Mike Wazer, Sergeant Wazer, and Sergeant White. And Mike was a scooter guy, so he worked directly with the with ESU guys. And then it was me, Kenny, and John White. Yeah. Fresh out of the box. We were on the midnights. And then there was Bobby Charlton. And I loved that guy. He was the best. Smoking a pipe. He'd be the chauffeur, senior guy. He'd been there forever. And the first night we go out, it's me and Kenny in the Adam car. And we're looking at each other like, what are we doing here? Because first of all, he lived in Queens, and I never worked in Queens, except for transit rescue. And all our jobs are in subway stations. We weren't going to 51st Avenue or 51st Street or 51st Boulevard so we were going to houses. And then the one call, which is a real funny call, Lee Hom was a sergeant in the 109. Okay. And he calls Bobby over the radio and tells him to go to a special channel. So we're all sitting there up in the quarters, And he goes, "What do you need, Lee?" He goes, like, "I need you guys over here for the special extraction." Now, all three of us, John White, Kenny, and I, all look at each other like, "What the are you talking about?" And Bobby says, "All right, we'll be right there." He gives me and Kenny the address. It's a barricade. It came in as a barricade, but we get there, and we're new guys, so we're taking everything. We emptied the truck, vest, helmets, Y-bar, you name it. We pulled it off the truck, and we're dragging it down the side of this house. And the sergeant Lee says, "Oh, you must be the new guys." Charlton comes up and he says, how do you want to do this? He says, "I don't care. We'll yank him through the kitchen window." So the guy's, jumping up and down. He's harmless. He's, but the funny part of it was that we dragged all our equipment out, instead of just coming down and checking first, like you learned.
Right. Because now you got the rest of the city. I mean, in your case, it was Queens because you were a 10 truck guy primarily. I'll get the 7 truck later. But you got the rest of the city to learn. And it's not like you didn't know the city per se. You had, in your case, at that point, 14 years to learn it. But you're primarily underground. Even in transit rescue, there's only a certain amount of spots you can go to because you're just, again, you're relegated necessarily to the transit aspect of emergencies. That doesn't mean you can't assist if it's large enough, but for the most part, it's, wherever a train is going to go overhead or underhead for that matter. But getting to ESU exposes you to a different component because now you're citywide, nothing's off limits. And I imagine that was the really cool part of it. And just to set the stage before you continue, for those that aren't familiar with the area, there's a lot of cool assignments to have in emergency service, but focusing specifically on 10 truck. Back then, it's different now. In 95, when John got there, he's right in the shadow, right down the street from Shea Stadium. So during the summertime, it's extra busy with people coming in to see Met games. Of course, you have the tennis open going on during the summer of that time in that same area around there too. And that's just not even counting the regular jobs that go on day in and day out. Heavy Asian community over there too. It's a really unique niche area in New York City. It's one of the funnest beats I think you could have as a cop, especially an E-man. So for you, I mean, once you got the chance to learn it and get your own flow and rhythm in emergency, that had to have been bliss.
Yeah, well, you got to remember, we covered from the Nassau border to the city, to the tunnel north of the expressway. We had Queens North, and then 9 truck had Queens South, and we had some 115 and 110. They were probably the busiest precincts we dealt with. The 114, we had a lot of busy jobs. But it is, you could, I worked midnights, and you could come in and it could be quiet or it could be crazy,
right? Make you pick. You never know.
Yeah. And talking about some of the special jobs, we got to work the US Open overnight. So, we got to see, if there was anybody leaving later or getting there early, or, and you were assigned to the open. You weren't assigned to patrol. You would be assigned to the open. And that's where you would have a static post. That would be your, you wouldn't leave the place. Mm-hmm. So, but, and then you get the World's Fair. You get the World's Fair.
Yeah, I forgot that's in Queens. Yeah, I forgot that's a Queens thing. Yeah, not a bad beat to have either. Before I continue, hey, hi, Sal Formica. He's also in the chat. Sal says hello to both of us. So good to see you.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
Sal Formica. He's an 8 truck guy.
The politician.
Yeah, he's doing pretty well for himself in that regard. Yeah. So shout out to you, good brother. I hope all is well with you, Sal. Good to hear. Good to hear you. That being said, I will say this, because even if you're not a Met fan per se, a stadium.
I am a Met fan.
Okay, so there you go. 99, 2000, when they're making those deep runs, the LCS in 99, the World Series against my Yankees in 2000. Any stadium details during that time period?
Yep, I got a picture on my refrigerator of me and my partner, Pete Calfa.
There you
we
go.
were in the we were assigned to the outfield and the outfield inside the stadium, and then we were like the spotters, but we had the outfield near Monument. It was at Yankee Stadium. It was at Monument Field. That's where the picture is. And he's a Yankee fan. He's a diehard Yankee fan.
As am I. Yeah.
We used to get along during the football season because we're both Giants fans, but during the baseball season, we used to fight like cats and dogs.
Oh boy.
But anyway, yeah, we did that, and I'll give you a real quick funny story. We were it was Mets Yankees, and Al Leiter's warming up in the National League bullpen, and Mike Piazza's catching him. And we're standing there and we're watching, but we're also doing what we're supposed to be doing. I turn my back to face the field, and I get a tap on my shoulder. And I turn around, it's Bobby Valentine. And he goes, like, "Hey, officer, how you doing?" Bobby was very friendly.
Yeah.
He says, "You want to catch Al Leiter for a couple of, you want to catch Al Leiter?" I go like, "There's too many eyes on me, Bobby. I'd love to, but he offered me to get behind the dish, and because I was a catcher also when I played baseball, but
right,
it was just a very surreal." That my partner's done. I go do it. I go like, nah, there's too many guys.
Right.
Watching.
With your luck, somebody walks by a boss or something, and there you go.
Yeah. Well, remember Wade Boggs and the horse?
96. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't need to be.
Yeah. Nah. I'll say this, and even though I'm a Yankee fan, I got nothing. And I've said this before. You guys know this. I got nothing against the Mets. Listen, the Mets have never done anything to me. It's better for the city when both teams are good at the same time. That being said, if for those of you that are just baseball fans, if you ever want to watch a truly underrated pitching performance that does not get talked about enough, 99, the Mets are on this crazy run. They'd had a great summer, but they had a terrible September. They looked like they're about to collapse their way right out of the playoffs, which they did the year before, 98. So they're in a tiebreaker with Cincinnati. They're both finished the year 96 and 66. Go to Cincinnati. Al Leiter throws a 9-inning, 2-hit, complete game shutout. The late, great Ricky Henderson hits a home run. Edgardo Alfonso hits a home run. That's one of the finest pitching performances you'll ever see, and it put the Mets in the playoffs for the first time in 11 years. So if you guys got time to kill one day, throw up that game on YouTube, because you want to talk about a gamer and a pitcher that doesn't get enough love for how good he was.
Al Leiter was one of the best.
Al Leiter was great. He was great. And really, that 2-year period for baseball in the city was great, because Mets get into the playoffs. They upset the Diamondbacks, and then even though they fell short against Atlanta, scared the hell out of Atlanta. And even any Yankee fan will tell you this during that time frame in 2000 when they met up in the World Series. The series only went 5 games, but the Yankees had to scratch and claw for every victory in that series. It was a very, very competitive series. Any of those games could have went either way. So definitely fun details, fun memories. Now, last note on that, there used to be in Shea Stadium in center field like a little tower for the cameramen, and you would see cops there too. When you guys had details there, was that one of the spots you guys would?
That was a spot for a sniper.
All right, there you go. And what a spot that is, because you talk about a bird's eye view of everything. Anybody that remembers remember Shea Stadium knows what I'm
talking about. And the snipers were up in the lights too.
Yep.
What I understand
too. Yep.
I wasn't a sniper. I was a ground guy.
Oh, okay. Yep. There's a few guys that have talked about that. So we fast forward. Is it the summer of 01 you go to 7 Truck?
Yep.
Okay. So before I get to, the 11th and everything that came with that, just going to 7 Truck alone, at that point, a long time in 10 Truck, you hit 6 years or so with 10 Truck. You hit 20 years in the job in 01. It seemed like that was going to be the place that you were going to finish out things. What made you want to go to 7? Was it the commute? What was it?
The reason why I wanted to go, it wasn't the fact that I wanted to go to 7 Truck per se, but that's where my partner Pete Kalfa was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we were steady partners in transit. The merge came along. He worked the scooter chart, and I went to midnights. So we would talk every day, but we didn't carpool together. We didn't do anything. I mean, he's the godfather to my youngest daughter. So
right.
that's how close he is to me. But there was a chance, and I tried to go to 9 truck where he was. I tried to, so he finally went to midnights, and there were a number of transit guys on the late tour on the midnights, and there was a boss who liked me, but he didn't want to put any more transit guys in 7 on the late tour. Richie Locke was the boss. You had Tony Romano, Jose Padro was a housing guy, but you had Pete. And I think there was 1 or 2 more other guys there. But I turned around and I put in for it. He said no. I first went to white. Well, let me backtrack. I made the mistake in not going up the chain of command, and this was totally my doing and my fault, and I deserved the punishment that I received. I went right to Inspector Wasson. Great guy and everything.
Yeah, Ronnie's been on the show.
He wasn't happy about what I said to him. He didn't like the fact that I was being prevented from going to, he said, yeah, no problem. I'll sign off on it. But the problem was I didn't talk to John, and John was a good friend of mine. I didn't talk to John. I didn't talk to my truck lieutenant, who was, it was a female, and I see her face, but I can't remember her name.
Delia Mannix.
Yes.
Yep.
Lieutenant Mannix, who was a sweetheart. And then Captain Yee was the captain. He had moved up to captain at the time. So I didn't go through the chain of command. So naturally, I got banished to 4 truck for 4 months as a punishment. Which, and like I said, I was the 100% in the wrong. If you don't follow a chain of command, then, Anyway, did my penance. Came back, made up, did it the right way. Everybody was happy I did it the right way. Everybody signed off until it got up to Captain Yee. And like I said, we got along, for a transit guy. And I told him, I said, Cap, all due respect, I'd like to go to the inspector. He said, go ahead. And he gave me permission. I gave him the respect, and that's how I wound up at 7 truck finally. So, and then Pete and I we did it until 9/11.
Yeah, and and I'll get to that just momentarily. Just setting the context, ESU is really probably in one of my favorite eras for it at this point. 71 years of the unit from the formation of it officially in 1930, not counting what they were doing prior to that in 1925. But you got everybody from housing rescue and the knowledge that those guys had, and obviously all the knowledge you guys had from EMRU blended into the knowledge that ESU had as a whole. And that's probably, for my money, the best era, no disrespect to the other ones in the history of emergency service. I love that 1995 to 2001 pre-9/11 period. It hits hard from the standpoint that you weren't in 7 truck long, but obviously from seeing them on jobs and details over the years, you knew Ronnie and Santos. You were in 10 truck for 6 years. You knew Paul. You knew Tom Langone. And so many other guys. I'm sure all 14 of those guys you knew very well. It's a very close unit. Not to say all the other guys from the fire department you probably knew, and whoever else you may have known from the other 9 outside of ESU, the 23 NYPD cops that died that day, friends in the Port Authority Police, same thing. I'll say this: you ended up leaving April 30th, 2002. Had it not been for that day, especially being back with Pete and 7 truck, would you have stayed longer?
Well, my last day of patrol was February 27th of 2002.
Okay.
And the only reason why I left at the time is because a friend of mine who was a headhunter out in the security world, worked for Blackwater, the original Blackwater before it got all dicey and everything. he turned around and he found a job driving a guy out of Connecticut, and it started at $100,000 a year. And he told me, he said, I think you should interview for it. And so I went, talked to the guy. He was a young guy, 40. He was in his 40s. And he, made Forbes magazine, youngest stuff, top 40, under 40, whatever. And we hit it off. Now, he was in the entertainment business. He worked for Interpublic Group's a company, which is a worldwide conglomerate as far as public relations and everything else like that. And they have a whole bunch of different companies under them, and they were forming a new sports and entertainment group, and this guy was taking it over. So he was able to get a driver at whatever price, so he offered me. Everybody then wanted a gun. They wanted a guy, and they wanted, if you could get an ESU guy, that was even better.
You must say, yeah, all that training and experience.
Right. So I got the job, and I started like 2 weeks after I left patrol, and I did that for about 3 years. But he produced Dave Matthews in the park. He produced Sheryl Crow in the park. So I got to meet all those people. I became first name bases and everything else like that.
Oh wow, pretty cool.
So it was a good job. I did mostly driving, and I'd protect his family. If his family had to go somewhere, I went with them. And so, but looking back on it, I should have stayed. My plan was to stay 25 anyway. That's why I went past my retirement chance. And 9/11 had nothing to do with me leaving. It just had to do with money back then. And that's a whole side story that you and I could talk off camera.
That's fine.
Sometime.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You got my number. You can tell me about that story anytime you want to. And I'll go back a second. And you mentioned Lee Hom, by the way, earlier. Lee Hom. Because I know he was a good friend of John Delara's because they worked together for a bit. Was Lee an ESU guy for a little bit?
He was in two truck.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Did he leave when he made
back? When he made boss, he had to go back out to patrol. Okay. And then he finally came back to us.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, I think Lee was an emergency guy, and I guess I remember. Putting a tribute article.
Lee was a excellent ESU guy.
There you go.
Don't tell him I said that because it'll go to his head. But
I gotta find him and get him on the show, because I remember when I was curating stuff, because I was doing a tribute column for Delara. It mentioned in Delara's obituary in the New York Times, Lee Hom was mentioned, and it said he worked with Officer Delara in the late 80s and 90s. So I knew they were friends. I just didn't know if Lee was an emergency guy. And he was.
Let me tell you a real quick story about Lee Hom on the late tours in 10 truck. He was a sergeant, and around the corner on Main Street, there was a karaoke bar, and there were shots fired. They had the metal detector. There was a couple of rounds in the metal detector, and then there was a couple of drunk guys. They were dressed up, but they were part of the problem. Yeah. So he grabs one of them and starts interrogating him, and the guy's going like blah 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 blah. So finally he turns around. We show up and we go like, "What do you want to do?" He says, "Come on." He grabs the guy, okay, and he pushes him up the stairs like a shield, all the way to the second floor. And we're going like, "Well, he's the boss, so
he can do it."
There. And it's a pretty big place, so we going through and everything, and then we hear some noise coming out of one of the karaoke rooms. So Lee opens the door, and sure enough, they're still in there singing.
Yeah,
they're shooting up the bar, and these guys are still in there singing. But,
well, the wonders of alcohol,
Yep.
It makes you oblivious to the rest of the world, makes you foolproof in certain respects. You just shouldn't drive when you're under it. And in a little quick aside too, again, you knew everybody, but just focusing on 10 truck. Paul had been there for a few years. I think Paul got there in 98, because I think him and my buddy Danny Cohn, who ended up being a ESU guy in Long Island, were in the same STS class. And then obviously Tom Langone. Yeah, Danny, whose brother Jimmy
lived around the block from me in Sayville.
Oh, there you go.
I moved out to Sayville. I knew Danny very well.
Yeah, good guy. He's been on the show before. He retired recently from Long Island. I forget. I think he was Suffolk ESU or
Suffolk
Nass.
issue.
Yep, he was Suffolk ESU for a long time, and obviously two truck for a little bit. Got in '98. And Tommy, I mean, there are a lot of people who have told me I don't think anybody knew more, and I had the chance to do a tribute show to him with his daughter about rescue because he was an excellent firefighter. His brother was a firefighter in Squad 252.
Who's this?
Tom Langone.
Oh,
Um,
Tommy Langone.
you know, they both got killed that day, sadly. But if you look at
Smartest guy that I ever met. I mean, as far as training, he was 100% all the time, training. Yeah, and knew his stuff. His brother was a fireman.
Squad 252.
Randy Miller was Tommy's steady partner.
Oh,
okay. And Randy and Paul switched tours that day.
Wow. I didn't know that. I know Randy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, Randy's down here. He's right. He's 15 minutes north of me, and he's south of me, and he's a Sarasota County sheriff now.
I'm trying to get Randy on the show. Randy and I have had dialogue about that, so I'm trying to get Randy on the show.
I'll call him tomorrow. I'll tell him you and I hooked up, and then we'll see if he, see what he's doing. Because next week is the REMA, Florida REMA.
I was going to say, I got the email about that. Yeah, all you guys that are down in Florida.
Wednesday. I'm
covered in snow, by the way.
What's that?
Not covered in snow, by the way. So I'm a little upset at you guys.
I went to start my snowball the other day, and I forgot I was in Florida. So sorry, money. Sorry, gig. But
yeah.
I got 2 spare bedrooms, so if anybody wants to get out of the cold, come on down, man.
Yeah, no, and those guys, I mean, listen, looking at 10 Truck, from what I've heard, Glenn Klein talked about those guys too. Paulie, and this is not a bad thing at all, it was said in a complimentary sense. He was more kind of like the quiet guy, just came in, really focused in on what he had to do and got the job done. Paul Talty, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Very, very great guy. But
good family man.
Real quiet guy. And I didn't get to know him that much because I left. But, we'd see each other and, say hi and everything. But Paul was a gentleman.
And there's that picture, and I showed it when Caitlin was on for the tribute show a while ago, where they're getting off the REP, and I can't even begin to imagine what that drive was like coming in, especially considering the fact that you could see the towers from just about anywhere in the city. There's very few places where you couldn't. Knowing what's going on, especially after the second plane hit, or at least having a pretty good idea, even after the first plane hit, before the second plane hit. They get in there, they get down there, and there's that picture of Tommy's wearing his blue ESU helmet. So is Paul. They're getting gear off the REP. And if you look at their faces, I mean, I'm sure they understood the seriousness of the job, but both guys are calm. You don't see a look of worry on their faces. It's more so, and I'm sure you know that
it's just another big job.
Exactly. And they're just looking at their gear like, okay, here we go. And that's the type of calm that I'm sure for anybody that saw them that day in the South Tower that was able to get out and get to safety, I can't imagine the relief they must have felt seeing those guys coming up the stairs. And God, man, like you talk about guts. They knew what they were getting into. They could have easily said, nope. They turned right
running
in.
Down the stairs. Everybody's running out the door. And
trying to get as far away as possible.
They're going up. Mm-hmm. They're going up.
You want to talk about guts? Yeah, we talk about, especially being sports fans, right? Like I'm a big Knicks fan, so somebody hits a clutch shot like Jalen Brunson on the Knicks. Oh, that you hear the commentators. What a gutsy shot from Brunson, or what a gutsy move that was when a guy makes a big play in a football game or whatever. Okay, sure, that, and let me say it one more time for emphasis. That is guts right there. You want to know what defines someone with courage? That right there.
Yep.
Yeah. So
and I know we're probably going to get into some 9/11 stuff soon, but I just had to make a point. Rodney Gillis, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Rodney Gillis was a midnight guy. He was off duty. He was still in the truck, but he was off duty from what I understand, and he responded in. He saved a lot of guys' lives, okay? He was the calm voice on the radio after the second plane hit the tower and told everybody to change their tactic from rescue to tactical and to go back to your trucks, get your tactical gear, and surround the perimeter. And that saved a lot of guys' lives because they were halfway in, and then they redirected back out to their vehicles to get different equipment, and that's when everything started coming down. So they weren't inside the building. Naturally, they had to run. You know, I don't know if you interviewed Sal, but I think Sal.
I did, yeah.
He had to do a couple of crazy things to get out of the way. So.
Oh yeah, Sal told the story when he was on, and so Curtis Garvey hasn't been on the show yet, but there's a video. I think Arlene Harrison, who's president of the Gramercy Park Block Association in Manhattan, she did a great series of tributes to all the guys from ESU after 9/11. These interviews are on YouTube. They came out in the spring of 2002. She also did a tribute for Detective Claude Richards from the Bomb Squad. She spoke with some of the Bomb Squad guys about him, and it's very well done. And when they sat down to do Rodney's tribute, it's Matty Lawrence, Ronnie Griffith, who's been on the show as well, and Curtis Garvey, who I'm trying to see if I can hunt Curtis down and get him on. Curtis says at one point, and this is verified too, I believe, in Rodney's obituary in the New York Times or one of those publications. It might have been Newsday, where he doesn't finish the transmission because it was around the time the tower unfortunately came down, but he's trying to say clear the area. He only got as far as clear the air. But he was saying clear the area because I guess he sensed, it was going to go bad. And that alone probably saved a lot of guys. And again, to your point, he was a midnight guy. So when the job came in, he could have very easily said, okay, I'm not on anymore. I'm going home, guys. No, he hopped on that truck and he went. Took guys in with him to Tower 2, along with Sergeant Coughlin. Yes, from also went in there from Fort.
They had Sergeant Coughlin, Sergeant Mike Curtis. Okay, yeah. Curtis and Vigiano were together, and then you had the other guys. You had Santo Valentin and Ron Clofa. And I didn't know Ronnie that well, but he dressed right next to me in the truck, and now I'm very good friends with his brother because his brother was a fire chief, just like I was a fire chief, and we were in the, he was the Nassau County president, and I was involved with the Suffolk County chiefs. But that in itself was a tragic day.
Oh yeah, and Sergeant Coughlin had Steve Driscoll with them from Ford Truck as well. A few other guys too. He had Wally Weaver, I believe, and Jerry Dominguez as well.
Wally Weaver, Brian McDonald from One Truck.
One Truck, yeah. Oh God, Brian was new. Yeah, Brian was a new guy. He had just gotten there in the winter of 2000 to One Truck, and I think so. I only know this just from secondhand. Mike Curtin was in the North Tower with Joe Vigiano and John DeLera and a few other guys. They were out of the tower, but at that point, when they met up with some of the Bomb Squad guys, Detective Richards and my buddy Detective Dan McNally and a few other guys from the Bomb Squad, they looked over at 6 World Trade, and Sergeant Curtin, who was the one that outranked, he was the boss amongst that group because he was the one with the highest rank, said, hey, let's sweep the building, and let's just make sure nobody's in there, and then we'll get out of here. They were in the process. And part of me, when I hear that, I get so sad because I'm like, damn it, Mike, why'd you have to sweep the building? But I get it. He was trying to do the right thing. I don't fault him at all. They went in there and they swept the lobby. And as they were sweeping the lobby of 6 is when One World Trade came down, and Sergeant Curtin, John DeLera, and Detective Richards, Danny Richards, died in that collapse, sadly. But it's tough. It takes a toll on you. It took a long time. Guys, naturally, it's tough to make peace with something like that. But guys cope as best they can. And I imagine that influenced a lot of what you've done since. Now, one thing I didn't want to gloss over, there's an emphasis on counterterrorism in the years afterwards, right? JTTF task forces are forming left and right. And there's more of an emphasis on making sure that no loose end is left untied. Now, for you, I mean, I don't know how much of that you were doing. I imagine you were doing plenty of other stuff too, but you stayed busy post-private security with the U.S. Marshals for almost a decade, about 9 years. So what were you doing?
My post PD went 3 years with the bodyguard, and then I picked up some work with Cablevision, but it wasn't anything special. And then turns out I knew the U.S. Marshal at the time, Eugene Coughlin, and submitted my resume. And I started as a DSO, District Security Officer, which was you were working directly with the marshals in the courthouse. You would go in,
Nice.
suit and tie, and then you would bring, it would be you and the marshal bringing a prisoner up for a status hearing, or if there was a major trial, they would assign you as an extra guy. I was on the Coniglia brothers trial, and they were the shooters for Gotti. They were convicted of 4 out of 5 homicides, and Massimino. That's one of the trials that he testified against his people. So the first boss in history where he.
Oh yeah, Big Joey Massino. Yeah, he was going to get the needle if he didn't. He was going to get the hot shot if he didn't testify.
Now he's getting that, and the other rumor about that was that they were going to go after his daughter and his wife. And he said, "What do I need to do to take care of all 3 issues?"
He did. He did. Big Joey didn't mess around. He was believe, and if you've ever, for those of you that have seen the film Donnie Brasco, it's portrayed in this film, which came out in 1997 with Johnny Depp and Al Pacino, amongst others. The 3 Capos murder of 81, he was one of the gunmen for, which was, there was a power struggle, just briefly, that's a whole different show. There was a power struggle going on within the mob at that time. There's 3 rebellious capos, Sonny Red, Alan Delicato, Dominic Trinchera, Big Trin, who was one of the gunmen in the Carmine Galante murder from a couple of years ago in 1979. And what was it? Philip Giacconi. And those 3 guys were being lured to a meeting regarding, I guess kind of reaching a peace agreement, if you will. There's no peace agreement there. It was a trap the whole way. And Massino was one of the gunmen, and they shot and killed those 3 capos in the basement. And again, that scene is portrayed in the Donnie Brasco movie.
With the cigar hanging out of his mouth and the gun.
Yeah, that was Galante. Yeah. Trinchera might have been one of the gunmen, I believe, in that murder, which was 79 at Joe and Mary's Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, July of 79. So moving ahead to like the present day, I mean, my goodness, before I hit the rapid fire, and it's been a heck of a conversation. We've almost gone 2 hours and it's flown by like that. It's been a lot of fun. 21 years. And like I said, when I was introducing you, not to gloss over those 3 years on patrol, you did a lot, learned a lot there too. 18 of those years were spent special operations work between transit rescue and obviously ESU. That's a good run, man. So when you look back at, obviously it had a sad ending because of 9/11, but it doesn't take away from what you got the chance to experience and all the good that came with that. So as you look back on those 21 years, a chapter of your life that definitely brought a lot of positivity to it, how would you define it?
Probably the best years of my life, as far as the work. The only bad thing about the work was it was always at someone else's tragedy, as we would say in the fires, in the volleys. We're always looking for our next high off of somebody's low. But I wouldn't trade those 21 years for anything, because of the work, the type of work, and most importantly, the individuals I got to work with. I got to meet, I got to know, still friends with some of them today. Some of them have passed. In fact, if you don't mind, I have Barry Galfano's card.
Yeah.
Barry and I were carpool guys in District 30.
Barry was transit?
Yep. He was in my academy.
Mm-hmm.
Him and I carpooled, and then I went to rescue and he went to canine. And then he started moving up because he was smart and I was just a regular guy. He wrote the book for Bratton when it came to the canine, when he was lieutenant. Okay.
Wow.
He was Mr. Canine. And what happened was, after he merged, they kept him as he made captain, and they put him in street crime. He was supposed to be promoted to XO, and they get the DI. But on the day that he was getting promoted, it was around the Diallo issue, and they didn't feel comfortable with putting. They needed to put a minority in the spot. Okay, so he got bumped, and it was for a friend of ours, Bobby Wheeler. Okay, he was the one who took the spot, and Barry went back to to having his own team from street crime. And then 3 weeks before 9/11, he became friends with Watson over the years. Watson pulled him into ESU. And so he turned around, and he was just like most of the rest of us. He was first in, last out, and he developed cancer. And I was one of the last people to see him before he passed. It was me, Mark Chamberlain, a guy named Phil Goglis, who was a transit guy. He's now a judge. We went and saw him at his house. He was sitting there and, shaking. And he knew we were there. We went over there. We shook his hand and stuff like that. And he turned around and said to his girlfriend at the time that he wanted to go into the bedroom, go to sleep. So we left. I didn't even get around the corner and got a phone call. Barry had passed.
Wow. I never knew that story.
So that was probably one of the shittiest days of my life.
I imagine it's going to be in the summer that Barry left us.
June 26th, 2011.
Yeah.
And I keep this is in my visor every day. I don't leave home without it. It stays in my car.
Yeah. So. And Barry, God, he mentioned, and lest we forget Andy Stromfeld, who was a transit.
Andy Stromfeld, another guy, another transit guy, but superb ESU guy. Superb, knew his stuff. He was a volley chief up in upstate New York. He was also a volley in West Hempstead or Hempstead, and that is a very, very busy department.
Yep.
So Andy knew his stuff. Trust me.
He sure did. I would have loved to have talked with him if I gotten a chance to. And you mentioned Richie. I'm friends with his daughter. I was friends with Richie. Richie was the best. I had Richie on this show 3 times. Richie was in my book. Richie was a gentleman with a capital G. There's not enough good things I could say about that guy. And son's on the job. I believe his son's a sergeant. And I last spoke with Rich about a month before, and the thing that I always appreciated about Richie was even as things weren't looking too good towards the end, he was always very positive. And never lost that. So, I look forward to, seeing my brother again someday. I miss Richie a lot, and I'm glad you mentioned him. Richie was a good man. They all were.
Oh, Richie, we used to play golf with Richie.
Richie was good.
We used to play golf with Richie. We would what you call it? I've known Richie for forever, and we would go out and play golf. He'd play in the fire department tournaments with us, and he was a volley for a little while. But anyway, we'd go out, and one time we were playing Calverton, and this is when the F-14s were still out there on Calvin. So on the fourth tee, we'd be up there, and here comes 2 F-14s, and they always did it on purpose. They would fly so low, and then we'd wind up hearing the boom afterwards. So we couldn't key off until it was just there were a lot of funny things with Richie.
Yeah, I quote him all the time with the KISS method he taught. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. So he led a life. ESU, and then the bomb squad. A lot of big jobs he had in the bomb squad, including the big job in Brooklyn in 1997. So, yeah, I can't help but get a little emotional when I think about Rich. I always recall our last conversation. He was a man who never wavered, and he loved his family. He loved his family, man, both in the police department and his family by blood. And he was a good man who left a hell of a legacy. So, my friend, this has been a great conversation, but we're not done yet. We got the rapid fire. And that's 5 hit and run questions from me, 5 hit and run answers from you. But that's going to play after this quick word from our friends over at Granite State. Hey there, firefighters and fire buffs. If you're tuning in to the Mike to New Haven podcast, you know the value of reliable gear. At Granite State Fire Helmets, we're proud to introduce the TL2, our premium leather Phoenix fire helmet. The TL2 is all about comfort, durability, and that timeless style you trust. And here's the best part. All in-stock inventory usually ships within 24 hours, so you'll have it in your hands in no time. Plus, our company is proudly owned and operated by firemen, so you know we've got your back and understand exactly what you need out there on the front lines. So don't wait. Gear up with the TL2 today. Granite State Fire Helmets, where tradition meets innovation, and where firemen have you covered. Okay, 5 hit and run questions from me for the rapid fire, like I said, and 5 hit and run answers from you. First, and you mentioned one, but if you had to say between transit and ESU, of course, funniest call you responded to, besides the bar and people singing in the bar while it's being shot up.
Let's see. The funniest job I ever responded to. The only one that comes to mind that I thought was well, everybody else would find it funny, and now I find it funny. But I hate snakes. Hate them. Petrified of them. I don't care if it could be the littlest garden. So we get a call because we, just like ESU, EMRU, we all did the animal control. We get called to Brooklyn Bridge on the 6th on the local about 10 o'clock in the morning. And post cop's got a guy who's drunk, came through the turnstile. And he's got a bag of snakes. Okay.
Because of course he does. Why not?
Okay. So we get there, and I tell Pete. Pete was my partner. I told Pete. I said I'm going to stand back, and if they get out, I'm going to start shooting. And he's laughing. He's having a good old time. And then finally, they threw the canvas bag into the janitor's room. And so finally, I turned to him and said, uncuff the guy and tell him to go get his bag of snakes and tie him up. And then I gave him the noose. I extended the noose, the dog noose, if we use it. So tightened it up around the bag. And now I'm walking up the stairs. Now I got the bag all the way back here. And I'm walking up the stairs like I'm running away from home. And Pete keeps hitting me and keeps, and the post cop's laughing and he's laughing. And I'm going like, I'm going to kill you both. I swear to God, I'll shoot you right here, right now. Right under the city hall. I said, if you keep it up. So I think that would be Pete's funniest, but that's the only thing I could come to that would come to mind.
Man, yeah, that's forget snakes on the plane, snakes on the train. I love that comment from Mike Kane in the chat. That's true. That's true. The only snake I ever cared for was Stone Cold Steve Austin, Texas rattlesnake. As far as the real life snakes, I can do without those. John Latanzio says hi, by the way, another housing rescue guy, and a 5-truck and a 3-truck.
I'll see him next week.
There you go. I forgot John's in Florida too. So hi, John. Always good to see you, brother. The second question, the rapid fire, was, did you ever deliver a baby? You answered that earlier, so we'll skip ahead to the third question, which is most uplifting call you ever responded to, or afterwards you're like, man, that turned out great.
Probably the baby job.
Okay.
Because we delivered the baby, we saved somebody. We actually went back to quarters, cleaned up, and we had already said we were going to do it, but the PIO Al O'Leary called up and said, "What are you guys doing?" And we told him we were heading to the hospital. He says, "Oh, okay, that's what I figured. I'll meet you there." And sure enough, he met us there. We saw the baby, we saw the mother, and we got pictures, and we made the daily news and stuff, but. Fast forward, Bill Bratton had taken over. So he invited us up for breakfast, to thank us, take pictures and everything else like that. And then he was doing a recruitment campaign. So me and Kevin get a phone call one day. Listen, you got to come in, and this is what you got to wear, and you got to go to the station. And we're looking at each other. That's an abandoned station. Sure enough, we went out there. We were there with an actress, a Cabbage Patch doll, and a video crew and a still camera crew. And we became poster. We were up on all of the posters in the subway. Come join the transit police. And there was a quote from Kevin and a quote from me. You know, this is the greatest job in the world, blah, blah, blah. But, you know.
Yeah, it was. Listen, it was quite the job, and the Bratton year certainly helped. Him and Maple made a hell of a team there. Made a hell of a team with the NYPD when they, took over things in 1994. Crime, for the record, like I said before, in the subways went down 27% in that 2-year period. So he really turned the agency around during that time period, at a time in which morale was certainly an issue.
Bratton and Maple used to go out on patrol at night together in plain clothes.
Yeah, he'd show up on jobs, on train jobs. He'd
show up on jobs. They'd catch people jumping the turnstiles. They'd hold them. They'd cuff them, and then they'd call for a car to bring them and then to process them. You know, when Jackie first became Jackie Maple, he started the White Glove Squad in transit. It was a group of guys and girls, special unit that went out and they did everything in transit. You know, if there was something going on, they showed up, and they were called the White Glove Squad.
Wow. All right, there you go. Now, that in a quick little aside on Jack, and this is not to take away, because a lot of people say, well, Mario Salvaggi played a role in this too, and he did. I'm not going to take away from him. He certainly did. But the origins of CompStat with Jack, if you want to look at his contribution to that and how that got off the ground and look at what it's done just nationwide, not just in New York City, he had a map. This is, computers were around, but not like in the capacity they are today. He had a map. He literally put the map together, looked at the high crime spots in transit, and would put, little pins, colored pins in the high crime areas. That's the origin of CompStat as far as his perspective. Salvaggi contributed too, but that's how that started. And hey, look at what it turned into. One of the greatest models in policing that they instituted in the 90s, and it contributed to transit's turnaround. It contributed to the city as a whole's turnaround in the mid 90s, and it's still being used to this very day, all these years later. Fourth question, the rapid fire, after a long day on the beat, or even while you're out and about, what was one of your favorite restaurants in the city to stop in and grab a bite to eat during a long day on EMRU or ESU?
A sit down was Luna's in Little Italy. It's not there anymore, but we used to save our money, and then on a 4 to 12 or a 2 to 10 as we used to work. Frankie Valvo, who was in EMRU, an old Italian guy, and a bunch of us, whoever was partnered up with, we'd go over to Luna's, sit in the back, put up the big, tall menus, and Frank would tell the owner what we wanted to eat. We didn't order it. We just put the things up so nobody would bother us in the back. That was Luna's. Excellent Italian food. And probably the best takeout was the Wok on 14th Street and First Avenue. It was actually on First Avenue.
Man, a lot of guys.
Hole-in-the-wall Chinese place.
Yeah.
And the guy was stone cold crazy, but he'd know when we walked in, and we used to talk with him and stuff like that, and but he made the best Chinese food in the city.
There you go. Yeah, a lot of guys have told me about the Wok. So you're not the first guy to give me that answer. And fifth and finally, I'm going to kind of tinker the question of the rapid fire a little bit too. And Bill Bratton started Broken Windows. Yes, Mike Cain. He had a heavy role in Broken Windows, which he brought to New York, which he brought to, he had in Boston too, and he also brought to LA. That being said, for this final question, you grabbed somebody out of STS. They just graduated STS. They're going to emergency. Brand spanking new ECOP. What advice are you giving them?
Well, if it was back when I was still or getting ready to go, I would tell them to listen to the old timers and follow the traditions and everything else like that. But now I would just have to tell them, listen to the retired guys about tradition, and continue your training, train every day, stay in the know, always watch your partner's back, and always stick together. I remember it's a team effort at a ESU, and we're a family. The precinct guys, they have their little groups and they have their little family, but ESU, even when you leave, in fact, Tony Cooch would love me to. This is
I'm a Rima guy.
This is the old shirt. He came out with a new one, just the 1930 Mac on it, embroidered in. But it's Rima, Retired Emergency Men Association, and believe me, I can tell you a couple of stories where there were a couple of guys. We have a fund that Frankie Ferreira manages, and if anybody gets into trouble financially, if we find out, we reach out, and we come to their rescue.
Yeah,
and if it's not financially, it's something else. ESU had one word that was never in their vocabulary. I learned that, and I keep it close to me to this day. No is not in our vocabulary.
Yeah, no, that's it's true.
Never say no to an ESU guy because he'll figure it out. I'm telling you,
he certainly will. And that's
And a lot of the guys are a lot more mechanical than I was. But real quick story: Lee Elliott and I working 10 truck. We had a guy who couldn't get his car started, and it was in the gas station, but the gas station was closed. We told him go sit in the truck. It was like 20 degrees out. We stayed there for 3 hours in the cold until we got his car started. And he was able to get home. So, and I'm sure there's other guys have stories where they said they didn't say no, and they just pushed forward until the job was completed. So that's the one thing I pride myself on learning in ESU. Okay.
So. Never say no. I love that. Yeah, John, this was great. Stick around. I want to talk to you briefly off air. Before I say goodbye to the audience. Thank you. If you got any shout outs to anybody, the floor is yours.
Well, Maddie, Sal, Bobby Gagan, Billy Dempsey, Kenny Bowen, John Latanzio. There's probably more guys out there that I probably forgot, but hey, Sal. To everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, one last thing.
Sure.
Did you ever interview Tom Richardson, Chief Richardson?
Yeah, he's been on my show. I had him on when he was still a chief of department before he retired. He was on.
Him and I were our best friends.
Small world.
Okay. And
I'll have to tell him that you were on.
This was a funny story. Last funny story. I just remembered this one. I was at my first St. Patrick's Day, and he was at his second because he came on a job. Oh, no, he was at his first. So we met up at Suspenders about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning.
That was a great place.
And we were going to go back to his firehouse, 227 on Ralph and just south of Fulton. And, Ralph Avenue on the A, it was not a very but anyway, we go back and we're like bouncing off the walls and everything else like that. And we get off the train and we're arm in arm, and I got my gun out because I don't want anybody. So we get to his quarters. We knock on the door, and the house guy opens the door and goes like, "Oh God, you two guys get in here, please." And neither one of us woke up until the next day, middle of the day. And the bells were going off, and we didn't hear them. So that was my Tommy Richardson story. I have a lot of them because we were volleys together. Tommy is a volley.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, he was a volley. He was volley chief. Now he's a volunteer fire commissioner.
No, there you go. Yeah, Tommy's a good man.
Yeah, Tommy helped shape the Suffolk County Fire Academy out in Long Island.
Nice. County. Yeah, no, he was on the show
good friend
a while ago. for my Best of the Bravest miniseries. So yeah, small world. I love when worlds collide like that. I'd like to thank everybody that tuned in tonight, especially all the retired ESU guys that tuned in and chipped in with questions. It's always good when you guys are a part of the show. So I'm glad that this miniseries is back. It had been too long. So I love my FD shows. I'll continue to do them, but I don't want to neglect my PD friends, and I feel like I apologize. I feel like I hadn't done enough PD shows lately, so it's good to get back to it. Coming up next in the Mike the New Haven podcast, well, it's going to be another edition of the E-Man inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. He was a 9-truck guy. I've been trying to get him, but he's one of those guys. He's busier in retirement than he was when he was on the job, because that's saying something too. He was very busy when he was on the job. Eric Becker's going to be here for volume 56. So I'm looking forward to that one. Yeah, that's going to be this Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Man. Don't you miss it. Yeah, so I look forward to that one. And again, thanks to everybody that tuned in tonight. For those of you listening on the audio side, from their 1994 album, Cracked Rear View, Hootie and the Blowfish playing us out with Only Want to Be With You. In the meantime, on behalf of John Coughlin Jr., I'm Mike Colón, and this has been Volume 55, the double nickel of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. We'll see you next time, and I haven't said this in a while, as the E-Men like to say, anytime, baby. Take care. Good night.